they thought I was some cool dude having this sort of shop, and they thought I would be of some use to them in the managerial underworld of New York. And I went off to New York. I just left the shop suddenly, went to New York, fell in love with a shop assistant I had, who was a young American girl called Addie, only to discover when I arrived in New York that she'd had plastic surgery and changed her face. And I thought, God, I didn't even recognize her. But forgetting that and moving on to the New York Dolls, I suddenly started to be involved with them.
They say we were the band you love to hate. And there was a certain truth in that. Because first we got them with our looks, which was not planned, by the way. That was so natural, it was pathetic. It just happened. The way we looked on the streets was the way we looked basically on stage. You'd never find a doll, a New York doll, carrying his clothes on a hanger over his shoulder. You just wouldn't find that. It wasn't necessary. If we wanted to go right on stage with the drags we had on, boom, we did it. We could have fun with this. Basically, generally, let's keep the songs, the music, hot and 50s, magical. The 2-minute song, the 3-minute song, no more than that. The 2.5-minute song, hit and run. Come on stage, hit and take off.
Just looking for a kiss.
The type of songs were basically established by the Velvet Underground, the Dolls, and the Ramones. That kind of short, fast street music, talking about daily life among a culture of kids in a big city. The clothes and attitude, all the things, the ripped clothes and riding on your clothes and leather jackets, and those marks of punk were basically created in New York by the Ramones and me and Patti Smith. The Ramones didn't have any kind of literary background, but Patti Smith and I did. Funny, those kind of style things derived as much from our idea of French symbolist poets as anything else, you know, the fantasy of, you know, Gerard de Nerval walking around Paris with a lobster on a ribbon. The haircut, for instance, I got from Rimbaud and maybe Jean-Pierre Léaud in 400 Blows.
Times were falling at the window as the doctor cursed. He was a far too long consideration, but I can take it or leave it, it's time. I belong to the generation, but I can take it.
Malcolm made a note of everything it took that he's seen made a reaction. He jotted this down on paper if he had to, maybe that night, but he jotted it down constantly, always. He had a lot of other things in mind. Little by little, he wanted to take over. He wanted to manage the group, which I thought totally was a damn fucking joke.
He wanted me to go back to England and start a band with me being the singer, but I didn't want to do that. So he used everything that was transportable, you know, the haircut and the clothing style and the mode of the material and transplanted it to London.
A lot of the elements came out of New York. What a lot of hogwash that is. My view of New York at that time was a bunch of prattish pretend poets moaning over some turgid version of rock and roll. Absolutely nothing to do with any of that. Not no shape or form. But, you know, people will try and grab whatever glory they can to make themselves seem more important. If you've got any value at all, really, you wouldn't be doing that kind of rubbish. If that was true, for instance, and we stole it all off them, well, more fool them for only having one idea.
And that's where you're wrong.
I'm never more happy than when I'm parodying the English. I like to parody the English because I'm English. And there's another thing as well, which is that English fabrics have an awful lot of content because they had this empire. Nearly every fabric that's produced in England has got a kind of emotional charge.
Over the course of a year or something like that, Steve and Paul came in and I struck up some kind of relationship with them. It wasn't really like a friendship thing, it was mainly stopping them from nicking things, because Steve used to like to purloin this, that and the other. Steve and Paul were really, at one stage, were quite the skinheads of their particular area. And there was a thing that skinheads, instead of wearing beetle crushers and all that, actually went for, what do you call them, brothel creepers. So they were like that mod West London, heavily dressing up, being the most hip kind of guys around.
We were always interested in music, right from early age, you know, but from when we were, say, skinheads and that, we was very interested in the blue beat and all the Motown, early Motown stuff. That's what we first started listening to, really.
And they had a band, and they had a band, the bass player at the time was Paul's brother-in-law, I think it was, but he wasn't really taking it seriously. They wanted to take it a bit more seriously. So I'd mentioned to Malcolm that I was a bass guitarist, that I was kind of learning at that stage. And he suggested to Steve and Paul that, why don't they try me out? So I went and hung out with them a bit and had a bit of a play, and that was it.
We needed a front man, as it were, you know, and we thought the best place to find him would be probably the shop, you know, keep your eye out for people who come into the shop. And around this time there was a group of guys, probably much like ourselves, but who came from the north side of London, who was John Lydon, and a gang of friends who used to come into the shop probably for the same reasons we did, you know, on a Saturday or whatever. There was a group of them, apparently all called John. We noticed them coming in because they looked quite different. They all had shaven heads and green-coloured hair and stuff. And we arranged to meet John one night in a pub just down the road.
We gave this singer an audition in my shop later on, after the pub had closed, for him to imitate and for him to try to sing along with an Alice Cooper track on the jukebox called 18, which I adored. And he sung it like the Hunchback of Notre Dame with a handkerchief over his nose, I think with some embarrassment, really.
John just started going into spasms in front of the jukebox and singing and doing his act, what later became everyone knows and loves, you know. And I knew right away then that he was the singer. He was going to be the one, really.